Welcome to the MBR Show, where we scrutinise the latest bikes, critique the newest hardware and discuss the hottest topics in mountain biking. This month we're going to be looking at the latest Specialized Kenevo launch and why we hoped it was going to be so much more. We'll examine the latest Orange e-bike, boasting what we think might be a world's first. We'll go hands-on with the new YT Jeffsy, and we'll look at Neko Mullaly's quest to build the perfect downhill bike. But first, shall we talk about the new Kenevo SL? And you thought this was going to be a lot more than it's ended up.
Yeah, I did, because we've been kind of doing a little bit of digging on some patent stuff that Specialized had put out, where they're trying to decouple the links that drive the shock from the suspension links. And basically, I thought, like, we put a story up, a week before this launch, and I was like, oh no, this could be it when I opened the email. And I was like, oh no, it's the same bike. Essentially, it's the same frame, and the big difference for this year is that it's got the SL 1.2 motor in it. So it's got 50 newton meters torque and 320 watts peak power. Yeah, and it used to be 35 newton meters of torque, didn't it? So it's quite a big jump in torque. Yeah,
totally. But it's kind of what everyone's been anticipating, haven't they? It's obvious that was going to make it to the new Kenevo.
Yeah, totally.
So let's say for Kenevo SL owners, the existing owners, that's maybe not ideal, is it?
Well, it's not ideal, and there's two things that are not ideal, is because currently you can't retrofit the new motor to existing bikes. So like, it's not that you couldn't do it, because the frame is the same. So there is potential to fit the new motor to the old bike, but I think you need a new display to go with it. And Specialized just isn't making that available right now for whatever reason. Yeah.
So I guess if you got one in the sales, a bargain in the sales, you're probably thinking, oh, okay, but if you bought one at full price, like a year ago or so, it's.
Yeah, but then, you know, like it was a pretty cutting edge bike when it came out. I think what's happened and we're going to see that a lot with e-bike technology, people are going to leapfrog each other. Traditionally, brands had like a 3-year life cycle. Maybe 3 years is too long for e-bikes because the tech changes that quickly, but it does bring the Kenevo SL in line with all of the other mid-weight, mid-power e-bikes on the market. So that's a really positive point.
And I think one point we should make with the motor is that it's not actually just a software update.
No, it's not. It's a
mechanically different motor.
It's a different motor. Yeah, correct.
So if we go back to the frame then and the patents that, you know, kind of everyone was talking about, you dug a bit deeper into the patent and then you sort of pulled out a couple of things which maybe wasn't that obvious from some of the other stories.
Yeah, it's the key thing is that they're trying to decouple the links that drive the shock from the links that define the axle path. And that really allows them to, well, the key thing it allows them to do is manipulate aspects of the suspension independently. There's a part of the patent that's really interesting, is where they've kind of got the upper link on the bike in different positions to change the anti-rise of the bike. So how much the bike will resist extension when you apply the rear brake. And it's kind of like cool, because we've not seen a bike with adjustable anti-rise before, or any kind of like that kind of like detail. But when you look at the actual curves for what they're quoting for their anti-rise, it kind of changes the shape of the curves a little bit. But it doesn't, the bikes are between a range of maybe 40% or 55% anti-rise, which is pretty low. Yeah. So basically it's low or a bit lower, really. It's not a big thing. But
so do you think that's actually something that you would be able to feel on the trail?
No, I don't.
Yeah.
I really don't. Like when I spoke to Owen Pemberton at Forbidden, we talked about like anti-rise bikes. I actually said to him, I can't feel the difference between a bike with 70% anti-rise and 50% anti-rise. He said, of course you can't. They're both low.
Yeah.
So I think it's not until you get into that kind of 100%, the higher levels, maybe like you go above it or like you're around it, that you start to feel the effects. But that's not to say one's better than the other, just have different characteristics. So yeah, when I saw this bike, I was a little bit like, oh yeah, it's got the new motor, that's great, but it hasn't got any of the tech that maybe we'll see next year coming out. If the bike that was in the patent is the new Enduro, then obviously this is the E version, the lightweight E version of an Enduro, then we'll see that progression happen to this bike too.
Yeah, so the problem, I guess, with that UBB system...
It ain't going on this.
No, because you've got a motor in the way, haven't you, basically?
So the key thing about the patent was they had a couple of different configurations that allowed them to get rid of the upper what they call a tension link that connects to the top link and the seat stay assembly. So they had different little configurations that tucked in kind of like above the BB. They had two versions of that, one with an idler and one without, and that would allow them to kind of achieve what they're trying to achieve with UBB on an e-bike where you couldn't have it.
Yeah.
Which is pretty cool.
Yeah. So is there anything else that you'd like to have seen on this new bike?
Yeah, I mean, one of the shorter riders will moan that there's not enough seat post insertion on it because of the design. You got like 170, 180 mil dropper posts. They don't go in very far. I mean, like we measured that in the workshop just before we came up to do the show, and I think the minimum saddle height's 740, which is absolutely spot on for me.
Too high for me.
Too high for you. And then and I don't think, even if you went down a size, you'd just get a shorter seat tube, so you wouldn't actually get any more insertion. So it's kind of a little bit limited like that. And I don't think any of the, maybe hopefully like if they can make some of those changes that we talked about from the patent, maybe allow them to do that. You
know, you've tested the Enduro, you've tested the Kenevo SL as well. Mm-hmm. Everyone kind of thinks they're basically identical, but with you know, apart from the motor and the battery, but they're not, are they?
No, they have different suspension characteristics because, again, you've got a motor and a battery, so the lower link has to go, the pivot and the links go in different places. They're not identical. They look similar, but they're definitely not identical. You've got a lot of manipulation you can do with a 4-bar suspension system, all 4 bars. Like, it's like really, people sort of think single pivots, 4 bars, 6 bars, the more bars, the better.
Yeah.
And what's interesting with this bike actually is that Specialized actually say it's a 6-bar, which it isn't. There are 6 links, but it's still the wheel pass confined by a 4-bar suspension design, and then there's 2 links that drive the shock.
Okay, but 6 always sounds better in a press release.
More is always better.
Yeah. So let's do a little brief overview of this bike. I think there's 3 models on there.
Yeah. So there's entry-level comp at 6,500. There's Expert, which is behind us, at 8,500, and then there's S-Works at 12,500.
So pretty much the prices have gone back to where they were about, 18 months ago or so. We haven't got any discounts and stuff. We're kind of, back to the old levels.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see if, like, I mean, I think I saw a lot, when these bikes were discounted, I saw a lot of people riding them. It'll be interesting to see if people are prepared to pay the full retail price for them again. And what's interesting is that I'd say that this bike actually needs a range extender. It's not like the Fazua system or maybe the new Bosch SX system where you can kind of get away with not having one. You do need one, and none of the bikes come with them where the S-Works used to come with it. So that's why they've chipped the price down a little bit.
Okay, and it's which is about 300 quid, is it?
350, I think,
range extender? Yeah. So while we're on the subject of diet e-bikes, we've also seen Orange launching a new model called the Phase Evo, haven't we?
Yeah.
Now this is interesting for a couple of reasons. One of which is that it's got the Bosch SX motor.
I think it might be the first bike to actually, if they deliver on time, it'll be the first bike to deliver with it on it.
On sale in the UK.
Yeah.
You know, we think this new motor is going to be a real driving force with the diet e-bike sector, and because basically you've got pretty much the same peak power as a full fat motor, but you've got decent weight saving. And then you've got the Bosch name, which I think a lot of people want to have that reliability, the backup of the Bosch name.
Well, it's also got the reputation for, like, it's kind of, people go buy their full power bike based on the fact it's got a Bosch motor.
Totally.
It's a motor people wanted. And, like, I mean, you went to the launch of the SX motor, and I think what's interesting with the power curves on that is it has the same peak power, but you get there differently. Yeah,
it's definitely geared towards high cadences. So a more, I guess, a more advanced rider, you could possibly say. You know, not someone who's just kind of cruising around, just keeping the motor turning just to generate all that.
Yes, you have to change gear more and stuff. Keep your cadence high. You can't just kind of like just bumble around with it.
But when you get spinning on those kind of slightly mellower gradient climbs, it's really got some punch to it. And then it's got the whole adjustability and configurability that the Bosch system has, so you can really ramp up the responsiveness. When you do that, it's actually like it's got a real hair trigger response. So you can feel the whole thing sort of trembling as you're pressing on the pedals, like the torque sensors kind of just waiting to go. And that really helps on the kind of technical climbs. So yeah, I was really impressed by it, but I've got to caveat that with it was a very short ride. So we need to get it here in the UK. We need to do some range testing on it and stuff like that. But in terms of, like, the battery size is good, 400 watt-hour battery, and then you've got a really generous range extender, 250 watt-hour range extender.
That gives you a lot of power.
I mean, you've got 650 watt-hours with a range extender, which is the same.
It actually allows you to use that peak power, whereas with the other bikes that have high peak power and small batteries, if you use it, you run out of battery pretty fast.
Exactly.
It's a cool system. It's a really cool system, and the bike's cool too.
Yeah. So the new Phase Evo, it's a 160 mil bike. Obviously uses kind of Orange's
classic single pivot, monocoque aluminium,
folded sheet alloy, made in Halifax, British made. But one of the things on it that's really unique, I haven't seen it anywhere else, Let us know if you've seen it somewhere else. But in the down tube, there's a storage.
Just behind the head tube.
Yeah, like a little SWAT box type thing. They don't call it SWAT, they call it safe, I think. So there's like a little bulkhead above the battery, and then above that there's a little hatch, and you can put stuff in it, which is really cool.
Yeah, it's not very big, but you could probably squeeze an inner tube in there, or a snack or two, or like just a few little things you don't want to carry in your backpack and stuff. But I actually think the bike looks proportionally, it's a really sleek looking bike.
So yeah, they've used Mullet wheels. They've put a trunnion shock on there, which is interesting. It made me think that they did that to kind of shorten the eye to eye and been able to maybe move the shock down a little bit to get a little bit more progression in there.
Yeah, maybe. I'm not sure. It could also just be the fact that because then the front mounts are on bearings and you get like a little bit better suspension response. So it could be both actually. Yeah.
Charging port is on the top tube, like right where usually your on-off button is, which is kind of weird.
Yeah, but like if you think about it, like when you plug it in and then you kind of have to go around and find it, maybe it is quite handy just to kind of dip it in at the top.
Maybe everyone else got it wrong.
Yeah, totally. And also, I mean, it's higher up and further away from a load of crap flying up from your wheels and water and stuff. And so,
that always helps in the UK.
It might help seal it.
Yeah. Another slightly curious bit of spec to this model was the Purion controller on the handlebars, which, and I'm a big fan of the little wireless mini remote.
That's nice, yeah.
Maybe they couldn't do that because they had the charging port on the top tube, and you need to have the top tube display thing on there.
For the connectivity sort of thing, yeah.
Don't know. But yeah, it's a good looking bike. I think it's one of the best looking Oranges to date.
Yeah, me too. And the thing is, it really does look like an analog bike.
Yeah. And weight wise, they're claiming 19.5 kilos.
Which is comparable with every carbon lightweight e-bike on the market once you've got proper tires, a proper fork. If you put proper bits on it, like 19's kind of like the target weight.
I think
for a
most things end up being like that.
In fact, all three of there's claimed weights for the Specialized bikes on the launch information for the new Kenevo SL2, and they're all over 19 kilos and they're full carbon. Yeah.
Well, when we look at the Bosch system, they claim a 2 kilo motor and a 2 kilo battery. Then you've got to add in all the mounts and the wiring and everything. So you're looking around about 5 kilos. You're looking at a CX system is about just over 7 or something like that, I think. So you've got about a 2 kilo weight saving. It's not dramatic. More importantly, it's that kind of sub 20 kilo kind of barrier really changes the sort of handling and dynamics of the bike, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does, but I don't think it's just that, because I've ridden like 19.5 kilo like mid-power bikes, and I've ridden 21.5 kilo full power bikes. So there's only like 2 kilo difference in weight, and it ain't the weight that makes them feel different. Yeah, okay. There's definitely more to it than just everybody's obsessed with the weight numbers. There's more to it than that, and hopefully we can get some figures on that. And like just a theory I've got, I don't know, maybe I'm completely wrong, but like if we can get the stats to back it up, it would be really cool, because you can feel it when you ride it. Yeah. Well, watch this space. Yeah. So I think we covered the Phase Evo. I think we're going to move on now to an analog bike. So a rare breed. Yeah. A new analog bike. Yeah. Great.
YT Jeffsy. So in case you missed it, YT launched a new version of the Jeffsy. I think it's the 3rd generation from the direct sales brand. And we've got one right now over in the workshop with Jamie. So over to Jamie to give us a quick rundown on the new Jeffsy.
Thank you very much, Danny. Yes, this is the latest iteration of the YT Jeffsy. It's the 3rd version of the bike, and one I spent quite a bit of time on riding in South Wales and the Forest of Dean. So the biggest change is that YT has taken the travel down from 150mm to 145mm. So it's not done what kind of most brands do, which is to make their bikes bigger, burlier, longer travel each time. It's gone the other way. And there's a really good reason for this. It's that we've always found that the Jeffsy is a brilliant bike when it's descending, but it was never as good when it was climbing. And that is quite a big deal for a trail bike. It needs to go up as well as down. YT has also spent some time changing the suspension characteristics of the new Jeffsy. So they've added in a bit more anti-squat to make the bike pedal better. That's a really important decision, I think. It should make the bike climb better, it should pedal better when you're sat down, and it should also resist those braking forces and kind of stop it diving into its travel quite so easily. In terms of geometry, they haven't really changed very much, but what they have done is they have steepened up the seat tube angle just a little bit, just to put you in a slightly better position for when you're climbing. That's a big deal too. So when you're sat down pedaling up a really steep fire road, it should be in the best position possible to take you back up to the top of the hill. And now we come to the pièce de résistance. I don't know what that is in German. There's probably something like that. But this is what YT wanted to shout about. It's the down tube storage hidden in the down tube. It's a really cool idea. Loads of brands are going with it now. You get a watertight door so that no mud or water can get in there and mess up all your tools. And inside that down tube storage, you get a little pouch to put all your tools in, which is, again, is a really good idea because it's going to keep them perfectly dry. So if you ever come to use them, they won't be covered in mud. There are two things I want to say about the spec. The first is that YT has switched to Exo Plus tyres. Hallelujah, that's absolutely amazing, because YT used to spec the crummy dual ply tyres, which just weren't up to much. You could slice them open quick as that. So it's great to see they've gone with the new Exo Plus casing. So there are 5 bikes in the range. There's a Core 1, which starts at £2,500, which is amazing value for a new bike. And it goes all the way up to the Core 5 here, which is £6,000. And with that, you get T-type drivetrain, which is the best of the best from SRAM. Check out the silhouette of this bike. It's pretty much identical to how it used to be. The only difference is that there used to be a little gap here. There used to be a bridge between the seat tube and the top tube. They kind of filled that in, made it look a little bit beefier. And then likewise, it looks a bit sleeker, a bit more modern at the front of the bike there. Otherwise, you could hardly tell the difference. Okay, how the bike rides. I really like this bike. The general feel of the ride is better when you're climbing. It does sit higher in its travel. When you're sat down and pedaling, that steeper seat tube angle is way better. It puts you in a better position. And you can feel that the bike accelerates better when you're out of the saddle and pedaling. It does seem to be a better climbing bike, so well done YT for doing that. Downhill, it still feels really, really supple. It feels really pillowy and cushiony. You get loads of grip. It feels like a bigger bike than the 145mm travel would suggest. So again, they've done a really good job there. Matching up how good it is climbing and how good it is descending, bringing those two more into line is basically a huge improvement for the Jeffsy.
Right, thanks, Jamie. Now, we've both been following World Cup racer Neko Mullaly's Frameworks project for quite some time now, and it seems like this week he announced a production frame ready to go on sale and is now taking pre-orders. So if you haven't seen what Neko's been up to, can you give us a brief?
He's basically just been developing his own bike publicly. Whereas most brands would develop a bike in private and there'd be a lot of secrecy about it, like the Specialized bike with cloaks and covers and all sorts of nonsense and stuff, which I think is partly just about gaining hype and getting interest in the bikes. But what Neko's done is basically gone on a journey from like all of the bikes he's raced and ridden in the past to like the things he liked about them. He did like a high pivot bike, he did a low pivot bike, he did an idler bike, and then he sort of settled up on this kind of mid pivot bike that he runs with an O-chain. It was in full alloy, you had problems putting them together, they weren't straight, like all the kind of classic problems that people have. And then he went to like, I think probably one of the most interesting episodes that I'd recommend people watch. I mean, they're all good because he's just straight talking, he's a super nice dude. And I just really like the fact that it's kind of like building all these different prototypes, building all these different bikes, trying ideas, like testing the theory and the ideas and actually just looking at the clock and seeing which is faster and which he prefers, which is brilliant. The most interesting episode for me was he built a carbon rear end, which is actually on the production bike, and for 2 reasons. I think he said he saved like 800 or 900 grams. 800 grams, which is a ton of weight basically from the suspension components that have to move up and down over the bumps. So in theory, the suspension should be much more reactive because that's so much weight to take off the swing arm. And he said he couldn't feel it. I thought that was brilliant. Like, to be honest, like just because like we get so much marketing material about shocks come down by 20mm, it's changed the COG height, we've done this, it's done this, and you kind of listen to it all and you go, yeah, I've tried all those things, that doesn't really make a big difference. And for him to just say publicly, I spent all this time, and he said he was disappointed. Yeah, totally. I was really expecting it to make a big difference, wasn't it? Yeah, it's a fantastic episode, but what it has allowed him to do is it's allowed him to build the back end square. They go together perfectly, the bearings won't wear out as fast. Yeah, there's other benefits aside from weight. But what's really interesting is that, and obviously it's a learning process for Neko, and what I've noticed is that like he learned that about the swing arm, but yet he still wants to run his shock upside down because he wants the heavier part of the shock not to move. But if you've learned that your 800-gram swing arm doesn't make a big difference, I don't think it makes a big difference which way around your shock is. I recommend anyone who's interested in like bike tech, just start at the beginning and watch his whole series. Yeah, it's a real journey, isn't it? It's amazing. You learn a lot.
So if we run through a few details on the new frame, it's a Mullet bike, so it's quite interesting. He was talking about, he went for MX wheels, not just for rear wheel clearance on your ass, gave him the ability to basically drop the axle a little bit and give him a bit more rearward axle path. Also, having the smaller rear wheel gave him a chance to use a slightly bigger front chainring. Yeah. Less anti-squat, less pedal kickback.
Yeah, because he's basically, because he's going for this mid-pivot design, but he doesn't want an idler. Yeah. Like bigger chain rings helps basically. Totally. Yeah, you got 2 teeth on the chain ring, so it goes up a little bit higher. 2
frame sizes, but with the adjustable reach cups.
Headset cups. Yeah, really clever.
You've got like 5mm increments from, I think there's a really wide range.
Yeah, it's huge. Yeah, it's huge range, and also then he's got like 2 chainstay lengths too for.
Yeah, so by moving the rear end relative to the front end without.
Again, another Owen powered idea from when he was at Norco. Yeah, which was a really cool, like the proportional geometry aspect of it. Yeah.
External cable routing, which is great, like completely bucking the trend of all top brands. He's got like a little flip chip at the lower shock mount to give 2 progression rates, 27% and 30%. And price, I think for the bare frames, $3,900. So it's quite chunky. And then you have a shock on top of that. You're looking at
3 shock options. And what's really cool with he's got 3 shock options, and he's done like tuning on the shocks. You're not just going to get a shock that's the eye-to-eye length and the stroke that's right. You're going to get a shock that actually he's ridden and tested and
tuned with the technicians,
tuned for his bike, and it's really cool.
And I think there's you can choose exactly the spring rate, and he'll give you an estimation on that and stuff. What's interesting as well is it ended up looking like an old Turner downhill bike.
It's really like from like 20 years ago. Yeah, I mean it's a good design.
Yeah,
it worked. It worked then. It works now. It's like like downhill bikes are pretty evolved, and it's tweaking, isn't it? They're all just kind of tweaking them. Like I said, if you haven't seen any of Neko's stuff, I suggest you just start at the beginning, watch his whole journey. It's totally worth your while.
Yeah. So have we got anything else to
talk
about?
There is. Yeah, I want to talk about this.
Wow. So something that's not 10 grand.
Yeah, it's not 10 grand. Actually, it's 8 pounds. This is Specialized Mountain Mullet Inner Tube.
Okay. So when you've got a mullet bike, you don't need to carry 2 tubes or one that doesn't quite fit.
Yeah, basically one that you don't have to stretch to get in the front wheel or squash to get in the rear wheel. One size fits all. It's a tweener tube. It's great. Basically, it's got a 40mm valve, and it says it'll do 27.5 or 29 from 2.3 to 2.6 inch tires.
Okay. That's a pretty big range.
So that's got everybody covered, really. Totally. It's really cool.
One size fits all.
Yeah.
So that's a wrap for the MBR show. Hope you enjoyed it. Please let us know in the comments below your thoughts on any of the topics we've covered and anything you'd like us to cover in future shows.